Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this is part 11 of my coverage of the Delphi trial of Richard Allen. It was Saturday. It's Saturday, November the 2nd, so it was a half day for this jury. And well, there's a bunch of things here that continue to support my feeling that this case is the prosecution's case is weak. And it was interesting. I was listening to Lawyer Lee, and I don't listen to many people's podcasts, but I again popped in on what she was saying at the end of her podcast. And somebody asked her if she thought the case was frivolous. And she said, no, it's not frivolous. She thought it was weak as well. Similarly to my take on the whole thing, that no, it's not a frivolous case. A frivolous case is when, what the heck? You're going to court with some complete nonsense and you don't have anything, or you've got just absolutely pretty much nothing. That I went, there was a case, actually I have it, you'll see the frivolous case if you look at the Andrea Cincotta case. If I remember, I'll link below. Andrea Cincotta was a woman who was murdered in Virginia, quite, I guess, 2 decades ago now. And I identified, after I analyzed it, the guy who did it would be the guy who had been on her property working on the mailboxes, and she had let him into her house, and gave him an old computer. And I said, everything, I think this is the guy. And it turned out it was the guy. In my opinion, he's a serial killer. And he wasn't arrested for many, many years. He was arrested for another case that was very similar, but he wasn't charged with that case. And eventually, when he was in prison, he confessed to it. But he also added that it wasn't him alone, that he had been hired by the fiancé of the woman as a hit. This was a hit. He wasn't just a serial killer who got his way into her condo and took advantage of her and killed her. No. I mean, the other case that he got convicted, oh yeah, he kidnapped a girl and raped her and then strangled her. She woke up because apparently he didn't strangle her well enough, and she testified against him. So he's in prison for life. But, by the way, his name is Bobby Joe Leonard. But when he eventually confessed while he was in prison to this other crime, he also included the fiancé. Oh yeah, he was the one who hired me. This case was taken to court by a progressive prosecutor, for some reason wanted to make a name for herself. And it was so atrocious. And I was just boggled by that she would even dare to take this to court with what they supposedly had. It took the jury 1 hour to find the fiancé not guilty. This is not this kind of trial. Okay, I'm going to say when the jury goes out on this trial, there's going to be a while, because it's not frivolous. The problem is he's a great suspect, and there's enough things to make one think he may well be guilty. But there's other issues with this case which could cause the jury to go, but I'm not 100% sure. I think that's going to be the problem. All right. So not frivolous. I agree with her, but not great either. So we're coming down. The defense is now, it's their turn. And what they're trying to do is hack away at the few things the prosecution has put forth as proof that he was the one involved and the only one involved. That one of the issues comes down to that van. The van is the van really, really was there at the time, just before the girls got murdered. And he actually said, I got spooked by a white van that was going by. And the guy's name of the white van is, let me get it here again. It was Weber. His name is Brad Weber. They focused on questioning Brad Weber, who owns the property where the girls were killed. Okay. And unfortunately for the prosecution, the one who interviewed him, Mullen, said he met with him August 2024, but didn't record the interview. And he said, I could have, but I didn't. We have a lot of things in this case where they didn't bother to record and yet are trying later to say this is what the person said. So the prosecution is saying that Weber said he left work at 2:02 p.m. and drove straight home, and the drive was 20 to 25 minutes. So therefore, he pulled down the road that went right by the bridge, and well, at the time he was saying down the hill, and he got spooked. And supposedly said it was a white van. Now I'm still confused over that, and people have tried to send me information that says, oh, he only said van, or he said white van, or he said this way back when, or he said it only after the van was known to be around. I still can't get a beat on this thing. I'm like, what is the actual fact on this? And I still don't actually know. I'm hoping in court they clear this up as to when he said that he was spooked by the van, and whether he said it was a white van, and whether he could have had the information prior to making the claim. In other words, if he wants to make a false confession and he has some information that will take him down, some people will do that. So this is a really great piece for the prosecution if all of this is true, that he didn't know about the van was really there. He said, I got spooked by a white van, and the van was white and was driving by. That would all be very good for the prosecution. But the defense is trying to pick away at this. And they're trying to now say Weber didn't really drive straight home. He did some other stuff. And I think they were trying to get somebody to be able to zoom in their testimony, and the judge knocked it down. So will we get proper information about this issue? And we're going to have to wait and see. Somebody asked me, they said, I just don't get it. And that if he was hurting the girls across the stream, well, they wasn't hurting at that point, down the hill, then the white van, and he's like, oh my God, I was going to rape the girls. But now that the white van came by, maybe my time is limited, so I better just go ahead and kill him. And that's what he said. I wanted to rape him, but I just went ahead and killed him. And the person who wrote me said, am I missing something? Because it doesn't make sense. No, you're not missing anything. It doesn't make sense to me either. Here's the problem with that. He could have, if he thought let me try to figure this out while I'm sitting here. If the white van goes by and he thinks someone is nearby who might have seen him, first of all, he's got to believe that the person driving by has any reason to be calling the police or be returning. He has to believe that. I'm going to say, if I am spooked by a white van and I actually think they saw something, how much time do you want to spend doing something? All right, now, supposedly then he made them cross the little stream away from the bridge and all that. So he's hiding them in a little area, which maybe, therefore, even if the police are called or the guy comes back, he won't be found so quickly. So he has a little time to do something to these girls. All right. Then why not just kill them and run away? Because the reason he would kill them is because they are witnesses. Once he said down the hill with a gun, he is effectively kidnapping the two girls. If they can identify him later, he will be charged with kidnapping. Kidnapping comes with a very long sentence, like mostly the rest of his life. It's not minor, especially with a gun. So he's going to go away forever. So he could be thinking, well, I can't take the chance that these two girls are going to rat me out. I better kill them so they can identify me. That makes sense. But then why are you messing around with disrobing them? Does that serve any purpose? You're taking clothes off of the girls. One girl ends up with the other girl's clothes on her. What the heck is going on? You don't have time to muck around with this stuff if your whole point is to eliminate the witnesses and get the hell out of there. You just cut their throats and run. You don't play around with them for a long time and then spend time trying to find sticks and crap to put over the bodies. If somebody called the police, they might find you doing that exact thing. You don't have time to do all that nonsense. That doesn't make sense. So Do I believe he got spooked by the van and therefore just simply killed the girls? No, I don't. I think that's a lie. So either he never saw any van, he was never spooked, or he saw a van and took the girls to a more isolated place and went ahead with whatever he was going to do anyway. I could see that if he had already had the girls remove their clothing and he was already in the process of doing something and the van spooked him, that would make sense. But if the van only spooked him when he was on the van side of the stream, then it makes no sense at all. So there I have this whole thing is very confusing. So I don't understand the van thing at this point in time as to what it exactly means and what it exactly means for this case. So that is a problem. Something else that happened today, and this really bugs me. So the Mullen guy, he testified. Let's see. Also, okay, Leesenby is the other fellow that was involved here. Toby, T-O-B-E. Leesenby took the stand. Leesenby testified he always thought only one person was involved in the girls' deaths. Defense attorney Baldwin, however, noted Leesenby's August 2023 disposition, and Leesenby replied, trial information was multiple or at least two. I can't even understand the wording of that. That isn't even English to me. Baldwin asked Leesenby, you felt 10 minutes after his arrest, Allen's arrest, that at least two people were involved. And that drew some objections from the prosecution. She overruled it, the judge. Leesenby said, Detective Tony Liggett, who is the current Carroll County Sheriff, believed more than one killer was involved based on a 2017 conversation. What conversation? I don't, some of the reporting, I just don't even understand. What conversation? Did he say what conversation? Based on what conversation? We were hanging around having wine. We were drinking beer at a bar. And one of them said, I think two people committed the crime. Or I think those Odinists did it. Is that what you're talking about? I don't even know. So he says, Baldwin asked, why did they think that? It was based upon the totality, and I love the word totality. I use it all the time. The totality of the evidence, totality of the information. It was based upon the totality of the information provided to investigators at that time period, Leesenby said. He later affirmed Liggett didn't have the details. What? Okay. So what the totality of the information? What information said it was more than one person? I don't know. I don't even understand that. Of course, the defense is still trying to get the Odinism thing thrown in there, but that's what he's saying. And there was a. Oh, by the way, supposedly that there were inconsistencies with Weber's testimony. By the way, so when he was interviewing Weber about the van, there were inconsistencies. The inconsistencies that we're not actually sure of at this point. So there was another point here about this issue about more than one person involved. Oh, the problem with this is this. When you're analyzing a case or investigating a case, the one thing the defense will always say you should do, they always say the investigators should do, is not be closed-minded. They should be open-minded to more than one possibility. So what's interesting is, let's say they're looking at this as a one-person crime for the most part, but they're open to the fact that maybe two people did it. So they have some discussions, and the discussions include, there's two girls. It might be hard to control two girls if there weren't two people. There may be suspects at the time. You think maybe those suspects could have something. There are more than one person that we're looking at as suspects that know each other. Maybe those are two people that are involved with the crime. So you discuss these things. That doesn't mean you absolutely believe the two people involved in the crime. You're being open-minded, but when you get to trial, now that's used against you. Oh, see, you once thought there could be more than one person involved. Well, we considered it, but now you're going to make a big fat deal of it. And this becomes a problem. Many crimes I've seen this in where they come back with appeals or the the DA comes back, the new DA who's trying to get the person out of prison, will say, well, those investigators once, they thought maybe they could be this, and they wrote something down on a piece of paper. Okay, so they're doing what's called an investigation. And then supposedly that means that they were really considering these other people. No, not necessarily. You write stuff down all the time. You don't necessarily think that these are the people involved. You're just considering it and you're putting them on the list somewhere. So that stuff just annoys me because I think that's just all blown out of proportion. Okay. So what else we have? I want to mention Doug Carter. Oh, Lord God. So Doug Carter, from the time Doug Carter was involved in this investigation, way back when he started giving his press conferences, made me gave me a headache. I didn't like his demeanor. I didn't like the way I know you're out here in the crowd, so I know who you are, this kind of stuff. He was a blowhard, saying a bunch of stuff that was nonsense. And then he did some interview, and I can't remember all of it now, but I remember thinking, you're talking such crap. You're talking absolute crap. And it was way before Alan was even a suspect. So if you knew who it was and all this kind of stuff, he had no idea because they botched the early part of the investigation. So they had no idea this guy he was cleared. And so for 5 years, you're basically just running around in circles with all kinds of different possible suspects, getting nowhere. And yet you were bragging on TV, bragging in interviews that you were in massive control of this case. And it came off very poorly with me. I was not pleased with him. And I kept saying, you need to shut the hell up. And you need to do a press conference where you have a person who comes out who is not you. The kind of person that can do a press conference and do it very blandly and say, we're working on this, blah, 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 blah. And here's the things we need to know from the public, blah, 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 blah. That's it. You don't want emotion rolling out from somebody in there and say, we're going to get you, so, you might as well turn yourself in because we're coming after you. Oh, get out of here. I've heard that more than once in a police conference, and it makes me cringe every time. So I want a public relations person doing the conference who is not somebody for your department who is going to be able to stand out there and do a very, just give the details you need to give to get the public's help and shut the hell up. He just bothered me. But anyway, what does it say here? The defense called Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter to testify. Carter has been superintendent for almost 12 years and said his role in Abby Williams and Libby German's death investigation was a, quote, support role. Although he was always in the front, as much as he could get in front of those cameras, he did. He explained dozens of agencies were involved, including multiple nearby county agencies, ATF, FBI, and Homeland Security. So this should be where people say, oh, why wasn't the FBI involved? Why is this small police department trying to do stuff? And one of the questions that was asked, I think Lori Lee, was it Lori Lee? Somebody asked, how much training do these guys get in this department? Well, I'll tell you over and over again, detectives almost never get any training. They become police officers, go to police academy or whatever. They get that kind of training. They go work the patrols or whatever they do. And one day, if they're in the good graces of whomever, they get to move into a detective role. They usually learn on the job from other detectives. They don't go to detective school. I wish they did. They should go to at least a 4-month detective school, not to just learn about procedure, but to learn about crime scene analysis and all this stuff that I would teach, profiling and crime scene analysis. They should get that before they walk into their jobs, but they don't get that. And if you're in a small department home, has very few murders, you don't know what the crap you're doing. You're just flying. You're flying. Okay, I'll just wing in this. And they do the best they can, but in this case, a pretty terrible job in the early days. So, but people say, why isn't the FBI involved? Well, first of all, apparently in this case, the FBI was involved for a while, which is amazing actually, because generally speaking, police departments do not want the FBI in their territory. They're not thrilled. FBI is not usually their kind of thing either. They don't get involved in local murders unless they're truly requested to come in, because that's not what their focus is. And just because you bring an FBI guy in doesn't mean he's any better than the local people on something like this. So, and they don't like the FBI coming in, where we know better than you, So they rarely do. And only time they're brought in is when the pressure is so big on the department. They're like, hey, let's just bring the FBI in and shut everybody up, shut the media up, shut everybody up, for saying, oh, why don't you accept help? Same reason they'll say, well, contact a psychic, because it's all nonsense. But hey, people say, why don't you have a psychic? Fine, we'll talk to a psychic. We'll see what they say. We'll pretend the psychic is useful, when they all know damn well the psychic's a piece of crap. So if you're one of those people who believes in psychics and police work, stop believing that. No psychics ever solve any police work. And I'm sure you'll come up with, oh, but he did and he did. No, he's publicizing that, or she's publicizing that themselves. So the police aren't saying they actually solve cases. So don't believe that garbage. It's just self-promotion, and it's nonsense. But they'll do that sometimes, because a psychic, they don't have to actually show the materials to. They'd rather have a psychic than a profiler, because if I come in, I get to see stuff, and I'm an outsider, and they may not want that. And I have worked with police departments, and they have brought me in, but many police departments are like, yeah, she's an outsider. Now, the FBI does come in, and they're not outsiders in the sense that they're going to keep it all hush-hush. So for that reason, they'd rather have an FBI profiler than me, because the FBI is part of law enforcement, and I am not. But they just don't like the attitude of FBI, and they don't want them to say, oh, we know what we're doing and you don't. It's a territorial ego thing. But anyway, the FBI was involved in this, and this should be something, oh my gosh, the prosecution can brag this to the jury. However, Carter said the FBI stopped their involvement in August of 2021. Defense's Andrew Baldwin showed Carter an email from the FBI, which Carter confirmed to the jury was his decision to release the FBI from the investigation. He also requested the FBI return any evidence. That is going to go a long way with the defense. It's like, why would the police release the FBI? Why didn't they want the FBI seeing what was going on? That's what they're going to say. There's some kind of corruption. There's some kind of hiding of the odinist, or whatever they're going to try to pull, because it makes it look bad. So as Carter is saying, that's not my favorite character in any of this part of the case, and he continues to be a problem for the prosecution, because the whole police investigation was not well done, shall we say. That's going to be the biggest problem in saying he's guilty, is because as long as the defense in the next week or two, however long the defense case is going to be in the courtroom, they're going to keep pounding away at the incompetence of the police. And are they just incompetent, or are they corrupt and hiding? Did they just use him? Is he just a fall guy? Are they just railroading him? Because after looking like morons for years, they just decided, hey, we got this guy. Let's go with him. We'll take him down, and we'll look good. And we're going to hide all the odinists and everybody else, because he's easier to get, because he's fragile. That's where they're going to definitely play that one. And so moving on to the psychology. So then they showed the jury videos from his time in prison. Okay. Was it Westville? Let's see if I got this correctly. So that's where he was moved to, and that's where supposedly his mental condition fell apart. All right. Yes. So the jury views video of Richard Allen while in Westville. All right. So at this point, they moved people so that only the jury could see the video, so the gallery couldn't see it. And state prosecutor objected to the video being admitted, and the defense attorney, Rozzi, requested the video only be shown to the jury for dignity of multiple people involved due to explicit material. Basically, he was naked in some of these things, and I don't know why, but I don't know that we know why he was naked. Was he trying to look crazy? Did he feel overheated? Did he want to show himself off? I don't know. I really don't. All right. So anyway, the prosecution had to pull up chairs to watch the video. Richard Allen couldn't see the videos. The 10 videos were taken during April 2023. One of the videos, referred to as video 7, was nearly 30 minutes long, but Rozzi sped it up. I guess, yeah. While watching the videos, Russell noted that one of the jurors raised their brows and looked at Allen, because that is meaningful. Well, several jurors were taking notes. At least they were allowed to take notes. I'm impressed, because I know there's many trials where jurors can't even take a note. and I can't remember anything. So, I mean, it's if I were sitting there as a, it's hard for me to even. There's so much information already in this case. It's hard to even figure out what goes together, who said what was more meaningful. I like to be able to go back if I'm really going to study something and study it. When I do some analyses of the cases that I do, the ones I do on Sundays, I do every Sunday, I do a case analysis. The great part of it is I get to sit there and review everything. It could be a documentary, it could be police notes, it could be appeals, it could be a book written about the case. And I go through all of this stuff. Now I'm only doing it educationally, so it's not like I'm spending a year doing it and making sure that I didn't miss a thing. But I have time to think. When you're in a jury situation, the day is so freaking long and there's so much nonsense, bull crap, boring stuff that goes on. You're lucky if you can stay awake. And then when they start talking about stuff, your eyes glaze over. And, I don't know how they keep track of anything, but, and if they can't take notes, it's ridiculous. In this case, at least they're allowed to take notes. So several jurors were taking notes. The juror with a background as a psychologist appeared extremely interested. Oh, I think this is fascinating. A juror was allowed in who was a psychologist. Now, a lot of times when the defense is eliminating jurors, they might not want a psychologist. But in this case, because they were trying to prove that the confinement drove them over the edge, they want a psychologist because in reality, I will state this, and if you're a psychiatrist, psychologist, you can jump all over me. I'm sure you will. I think that most people who go into the field are very soft-hearted and lean away from psychopathy. They lean toward therapy. They lean toward the person isn't hopeless. That's why they go into. They want to fix people. Psychopaths are unfixable, but that goes against the grain of a lot of what people are in the field for. So now maybe a forensic psychologist who does criminal stuff is different, but a person who's just a psychologist. In other words, they're not working with criminals. They're working with regular people, and I think they would feel pity. And so I'm pretty sure the defense wanted that psychologist there, and he appeared extremely interested. Alan looked down at a coffee mug at one point. Okay. Olivia Dearman's family appeared exasperated while the videos played. Okay. Several jurors frowned during video 7. I'm not sure what kind of reporting this is. It was pretty pitiful at this point. I mean, maybe they just couldn't do any more than that. So this is what they wrote. One juror took notes, wrote something on his notepad, and showed it to the juror next to him. It's like, I'm so bored. During video 9, multiple jurors looked toward Alan. Are you naked? I mean, this stuff is just kind of nonsense. The last video is 52 minutes long, and Rozzi told the jury he'd be advancing through certain parts. And then, so video 10, defense attorney Jennifer Auger appeared deeply concerned watching video 10. Okay. She's a defense attorney. She's going to play her role. At one point, Auger held her head in her hand and covered her mouth during another. Yeah, okay. Of the jurors, Russell said one of the alternate jurors had a sour look. This is so bad. While the school counselor appeared shocked. God. Oh, okay. The expressions of all the jurors over all that time. Come on, now get out of here. All right. What were they watching? So I want to get into what they're watching, because this is a problem. We got one psychologist who probably is a therapy-oriented person who has that sympathy thing going. We got 11 other people who aren't in that field, except the school counselor who works with children. Now, the problem we have here is, again, understanding when people see stuff, they have to be able to interpret that stuff. And they're seeing this stuff and they're thinking different things like, oh my God, that guy looks crazy. Or, oh my God, he's losing his damn mind. Can they determine that as opposed to the guy is faking stuff, or the guy is bored, or the guy's trying? Can they tell the difference? And I don't think they can. So what purpose does this serve, except that, as we keep saying, or many people keep saying, what the civilian jury system is, they're reasonable people. They can evaluate for themselves. They don't need a professional to do it, except that everybody in the court expert is professional. And we tell people, don't Google your medical issues, go to a doctor. They're the professionals. Yet here in the courtroom, they're not the professionals, but they're supposed to do professional things. So make up your mind. Which way are you going to go with this? But the problem is, do people understand what they are seeing? And I want to explain two situations I've been in where I have experience with certain things. When my sons were young, about 8 years old, they were playing baseball on the town baseball team. And they had the baseball coach was a young man who worked at a school as a teacher. And I'm sitting on the bleachers with the other parents just watching practice, and I'm bothered by the coach's behaviors. He seemed to like to slap butts. He seemed to like to slap butts of small children as opposed to big children. My sons were the biggest ones on the team, and he did not like them. And something about, from my experience in criminal profiling, I turned to the other people and I went, that guy acts like a pedophile. Which they were all like, oh, come on, Pat, you're being ridiculous. And it bugged me so much I said that. Turned out there was a trip to New York from Maryland to participate in one of these big tournament things. And he was going to take some of the kids, and they were going to stay in hotel rooms. And my kids said, can we go? I'm like, oh, with him? No way in hell. We will drive you. We will drive you there, and you will stay in the hotel room with us, but you will never be alone with that man. And so I told them why. I said, I don't like his behaviors. I think there's issues here. Well, I think it was actually maybe a couple of years later. One of my sons came running in the room and said, Ma, you're not going to believe this. He had read the newspaper, and that coach had been arrested for bringing children home, some of his students home to his house and showing them pornography and sexually assaulted. He's now in prison. I'm like, told you. But the other parents didn't see it. They just didn't see it. And the other day, this just happened a couple of days ago. So now mind you, I've worked in hospitals, and I used to be an interpreter, a medical sign language interpreter. I've worked in psych units. I've worked, with all kinds of people with certain problems. And I'm sitting in my art class, and there's a lady there she's very friendly, very educated, and she's very, she likes to chat. And she started a conversation with me, and I'm talking with her, and I'm like, no, she is not connecting dots. She's talking intelligently, and the way she expresses herself, vocabulary and all that is very high level. But when I say things, she can't seem to connect the dots between this and that. And I'm thinking that since I worked in the hospital, I'm looking at her, and she's been in that class a long time and doesn't cause any trouble or anything. And I'm thinking to myself, she seems schizophrenic to me because of the way she cannot link things together properly. And I think other people chatted with her and just walked away and just thought she was, how shall we say, eccentric. All right. Well, after I was thinking that, I go back to my seat and I'm sitting there painting. And about 30 minutes later, she starts talking. But the teacher says, who are you talking to? And she says, the voice is in my head. And I'm like, well, there you go. Schizophrenic. I mean, it was so amazing. I was like, and she didn't have a problem telling everybody she was talking to the voices in her head. And she was still very pleasant, but she was talking to those people. And but if you're not familiar with this stuff, you will not understand it. You will not see the nuances. You won't catch it. The same thing with cultural issues. If you're not familiar with the culture, you might see something one way, but a person from that culture sees it an entirely different way. You can't. We're not everybody, and we don't have every experience, and so it's problematic now. So they're looking at this. I don't know what they're seeing. And I'm not watching the video, so I don't know what they saw. I don't know whether he did appear to be actually psychotic, or whether he was faking stuff. I might recognize it if I were watching it because I've worked with people similar, but I don't know that they have and they would understand it. So this is some of the problems we have with, but because his behavior was odd and freaky, apparently, and they were shocked, especially because the defense attorney went, sure, they realized they should be shocked, they're gonna see what they looks like a mental decline. Absolutely. And that he's losing his damn mind. So now they've got to try to put all this crap together. And it's not clear cut. Was he really bridge guy? Did the van really go by? Did he lose his mind in prison and just start spouting a bunch of nonsense? Because they tortured him, essentially, put him in solitary and he couldn't handle it. I mean, what about that horrible police investigation? What about Carter telling the FBI to go pound rocks, go away? Were they hiding something? And the defense says, yeah, it's the Odinists. I think the jury is in a very, very difficult situation to come up with an actual solid conclusion of guilt. I think they're going. I will be so if they actually find him guilty, I will be shocked. Not because I necessarily think he isn't guilty, because I think personally, I think the evidence leans toward this guy. I do. But I don't know if even I were on the jury at this point, I would feel comfortable enough. Not because there's things that are off in this case, not because of necessarily corruption, but of incompetence and just things that you can't, just information is just missing. So that's where I think now the defense is going to go on this week and we're going to see what more they have to present. But already I think the prosecution case, just like Lori Lee says, it's not frivolous, but it's kind of weak. And if it's weak enough, the jury is going to say, we just don't have the confidence to find this guy guilty. And although as a profiler, I can take circumstantial evidence and often find a person guilty where a regular jury will not, because they're like, they want a video of the crime. They want DNA. They want, blood from the victim in the guy's house. They want substantial, real, such solid evidence. They don't have to worry that they're going to be wrong, because they're going to say, I don't want to put away a guy who didn't do it. This guy who the police decided he's going to be the fall guy. This poor guy is just walking in the park, and then they took him to this place and tortured him and just, I don't know if he killed these two girls. Maybe it was those Odinist people, because we all know, we've heard about the Odinists, even if we say we didn't. Maybe it was somebody else. I think they're going to have a very hard time feeling confident with what they've got to find him guilty. And this has only been one day of the defense presenting, and I felt that way during the prosecution's presentation. And the defense hasn't even gone to town yet. I think this is a mess. I really do. I just think it's a mess. And it's going to be sad all the way around. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe it'll turn out that I don't, and of course, if he's innocent, I don't want him convicted either. I mean, that's the whole point. You want to be sure enough there is truly no reasonable doubt. And even I waver a bit on this, just because, I think he's the guy, but because of these other things that were so badly handled, it's very tricky. And if I feel that way, I'm going to say those jurors have got to feel that way. So anyway, those are my thoughts. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. It is an exhausting case, just because I see it's like an example of how a case shouldn't look in court. It's not good. It's not a good case. And these girls deserve justice, and so does their family, and so does the defendant if he didn't do it. Oof. Yeah. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye.